Hello everyone, I'm Shriya
And I'm Sukanya.
and we are back with yet another episode of Intersectional Feminism, Desi Style Season 3, brought to you by Feminism in India.
Academia is a space that we all engage with for the longest part of our lives. From school to professional education spaces, universities, career milestones, we keep learning and we keep interacting with some kind of mentorship or training. But if we look at the people who work in academia, especially in research and teaching, there are a lot of stereotypes that become visible, right from people generally saying that teaching is a woman's natural instinct, or to the glaring gender gap in the number of women holding decisive positions in academia. There seem to be quite many glass ceilings in the sector that women encounter. So, in today's episode, we are going to ask a few pertinent questions about gender and academia, in the sense that in our country, what does it mean to be in the academia, to be a qualified, efficient, driven, passionate woman who aspires to teach, research, and thrive in the sector?
Absolutely, Sukanya. So, to take this conversation forward, we have with us Professor Vibhuti Patel. Professor Patel is a distinguished scholar of economics, gender, and women's studies. She was previously a professor and head of the department at SNDT University in Mumbai and retired from the Advanced Center for Women's Studies in Deonar in 2020. Her areas of expertise are gender economics, development economics, social infrastructure, human rights, and women's studies. She's known for her extensive research and expertise in the issues concerned with women's rights and the movement. Professor Patel has played a critical part in the women's movement in the 70s and 80s and has been pivotal in archiving the movement. We're so happy and humbled to have you with us, Professor Patel. Thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Yeah, hello.
Professor Patel, you've been in academia and you've been part of the feminist movement in the country for such a long time now. So, could you tell us a little bit about your experience and journey so far, and reflect on the changes that you see when it comes to both the feminist movement and also simultaneously the position of women in academia today?
So when I entered first of all, I was a full-time feminist. Only in 88 that I joined full-time academia. And that was the time where there was a resurgence of interest in the women's question, mainly because of the parliamentary debate about towards equality report. But still, women were at the margin. If they joined as a lecturer, they retired as lecturer. And non-teaching person, if she joined as a junior clerk, she would retire as junior clerk. There was not much awareness about the Equal Remuneration Act, which India had already adopted in 1976, increasing number of women in the organized sector and in the professional work like air hostesses union or police officers or diplomatic women in diplomatic positions or IAS officers. They had started using ERA whenever they were not promoted. But in academia, I did not see this kind of what you call vigor to fight. There were people like in Mumbai, we had a very renowned economist, Nalini Pandit. She was the senior most in her college, very prestigious college. You need 95 plus marks to get into that college. And it was a product of the 19th century social reform movement. And when the principal retired, she says she was eligible in terms of seniority and her academic record also. She was eligible to be principal. But that management, they said that it was not a policy for management to elevate women lecturers as a professor, as a principal, because the argument given was that how can we trust 6,000 students to a woman? So that is the kind of thing. So women were there in academic, but as you say, it was more of an extension of care work which women do. So they would be there as a teachers, and teaching, it's a famous joke in academia. If you do 100% teaching, and even if you are a good teacher, students love you, it is called babysitting. Unless you have an administrative position as HOD or registrar or additional charges for finances or various committees, Senate and faculty and board of studies and all. So those positions, unless you have, there is hardly any respect. You can be extremely successful teacher, but you would not be, and students would respect you definitely. But your rating in the academia, that she is a babysitting, no? So that is the kind of thing. And that's why there was a tremendous resistance. And in fact, so many cases of sexual harassment were very much linked to women who were aspiring more than the teaching work which they had to do, because they wanted to like contest election for board of studies and for faculty and for senate, and also would demand within the department, they would demand, if they are university teachers, they would demand promotion, being promoted. In fact, when I became director at for 16 PG departments, and I was just going through, like every 6 months you have to fill up the service books of teachers, and I saw that so many of them were eligible for promotion and nobody had even applied. So I called those teachers individually and I said, why don't you apply? You are just an assistant professor lecturer. You are eligible as per your record in the publications and the teaching work that you have done for so many years. You are eligible to be associate professor. And some of them, I just said, you are even associate, this thing for, you have PhD now, so you get 2 increment and you can become professor also. You can even ask for HODship. And but there was so much of fear of backlash from male colleagues that I will not be accepted as HOD. My male colleagues will not accept. And in fact, in those days, even if you read the stories in the Dharma Yuga and all the media also, that how the women boss in the manager in the bank, or woman HOD, or woman principal, or we did not have even woman vice chancellor at those days. The all vice chancellors were men only. So there would be tremendous fear about it. But then after Dr. Armiti Desai became, and imagine the first chairperson of UGC, woman chairperson of UGC was Madhuri Ben Shah, who was from SNDT Women's University, and she also encouraged so many women teachers to take decision-making role within the higher education system. And she's the one who also gave favorable. She gave her green signal to start research unit on women's studies even before the UGC she became a chairperson, which SNDT had started. It was called research unit. And the honorary director of that was Dr. Neera Desai, whose salary came from sociology department and all. So this is how it started. And then when she became chairperson of UGC, it was during emergency that it happened. But she also, in India, it coincided with the International Women's Year. And she also sent the directive that all universities should start women's studies centers. So things were changing, but it was in the 90s when Dr. Armiti Desai, who did not believe in any special treatment for women, she says, I have made my place in a competitive male world. And she was the director of TISS. And when she became a chairperson of UGC, for the first time, she realized that how these strong walls of patriarchy, so monolithic, they were not allowing women to come up in academia. Because she traveled extensively, she interacted with some 500-600 universities in this thing, and she saw the whole scenario that all decision-making bodies in the UGC, where they were only totally male-centered, they were totally insensitive to women's question. They did not care because TISS already had a crash in the campus, while none of the universities in India had a childcare center for either the non-teaching staff, the staff, or teachers, or even married students. No, if so many women immediately after they finish their bachelor's, they would marry them off. Once you are 20, 21, they would marry. And they could also continue. So she realized that there were so many women-specific concerns. She realized that the toilet blocks in the universities, they were also totally insensitive. They were in a public place, so women would find it very difficult. For menstrual hygiene, there was nothing. There were no women's rooms, the women where they could see. There were no counselors. All those things which TISS already had, she saw that all over India it was not there. And then she started a program called Women Managers in Higher Education. So she asked the universities to pick up hardworking, proactive, intellectually confident, and good administrator women. And they started intensive course for them with the various types of administrative, institutional development, managerial, and and sensitivity towards women's questions, so women's study. And this courses, this training programs by UGC, nearly for 10 years they were there, and that helped a lot for many women who were feeling totally isolated in academic world. They would do their own teaching very diligently and go back home. So this meeting other women from other universities and being together for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes 6 weeks courses and all, that enhanced their confidence, and scenarios started changing. By then, we also saw that government-funded education was not even seen by so lucrative by men. So many star academicians, they joined the private sector because 1991 onwards, scenario changed. In fact, for medical colleges, engineering colleges, School of Architects, then physiotherapy, homeopathy, law colleges, because they're the law schools also. All of them were money spinners. So man went there with the double and triple salary as compared to what the government of India, MHRD, was giving them. So there were two aspects. One was the commercialization of education, and second one was that women started aspiring for the same this thing. I started sitting in the Committee on Prevention of Sexual Harassment since 1990s, even before the Vishaka Directive came, because in Bombay there were several cases and they were taken by the union only, because the university had not created a safe space for women to speak about. And so many of them were linked to women demanding from them that I want seniority. I am very capable. All the work I am doing, I have learned because the computerization was coming in. So I know all the new courses I have done. And I don't want to stagnate there. The person who came after me, and they are also they are elevated and not me. The first case of Equal Remuneration Act was also from Bombay, 1976. That Audrey Devereaux's case, where McInnes and McKinsey, she was there. So there was a media coverage on this women struggling for this thing. So many senior teachers, women teachers, also demanded from the management that they deserve to be principal. And there was a pressure from below this thing. And secondly, UGC was also creating a more congenial environment for women in the higher education leadership. And also we had Equal Remuneration Act, which so many times women use them in the session courts or high courts. Some cases, I think, from police and diplomatic crew, they went up to Supreme Court also. But in academic world, they would go to the local courts if they felt injustice and their seniority was not respected.
Right, Professor. Like, taking on from what you already mentioned about, this bias, like, which is sort of not just there. There's a form of overt bias that is there, but there's also, like, a covert one, like casual sexism and stuff like that. So while in the past 2 decades, yes, we have come a long way, I would say, in terms of women's literacy or research on, women's topics or related to women's studies and etc. But do you still feel when it comes to administrative positions and, like you mentioned, financial positions, treasurer, etc., in these sort of, head of the departments and stuff like that, do you still feel like women professors, scholars, researchers are facing this bias even now, like when in 2020?
Very strong bias, yeah. Except for women's universities, like you hardly see women in those positions, of power. Whether it's a registrar or member of management council or member of the Senate member. And especially in the northern parts that I've seen, like most of them are all men bodies. Women are mainly at lower level of the academic activity. Maybe they produce papers, they produce books, so that way. But administrative power is largely in the hands of men. Yeah. And I think we may have to go for quota, because the way Maharashtra government in the women's policy, they say that 1/3 of the seats in all apex bodies of Maharashtra government would be for women. Only after that scenario change. Otherwise, all IAS officers, they were doing their work in the field and at a community level, but they did not have decision-making power. So I think quota can be the answer. Yeah.
Right. Also, do you think, like, even when women are promoted in these positions of power, it's done sort of not from the space of, okay, this person is deserving, but it's also looked at like, oh, this is like a just to showcase कि हमने किया है, मतलब ऐसा
And
नहीं
also
है.
the character assassination, no? How she became, how she got the position. When man is elevated, nobody asks how he got the position, whether it was a political pool or a personal equation with the powerful people or the politicians and all. But in case of women, the moment she gets the order, people start gossiping about so many things, no? And also sending dirty letters about the character and her personal life and all that. And anonymous letters are sent. So I think that is an extra element that in case of women, even when they give the efficiency plus, no, because generally a woman who would be elected for such position, she would have put in efficiency plus, but still there would be gossip about her equation with some politician or some other aspect than her own talent, which gave her this plum position.
Absolutely. Also, Professor Patel, when we started the conversation, you were mentioning about how no matter however much hard work a woman puts into teaching or however successful she is as a teacher, it's mostly looked at as babysitting. So
Yeah.
there is this, general, general idea that when there are women are expected to do certain kinds of work or choose certain kinds of topics for their research, for their study, for their career, etc. So you have specialized in a field like economics, which is generally not considered as a woman's field of interest or competence. It's never assigned by the society to a woman, something like economics. So in your observation, do you feel that the choice of subjects among young women to study, teach, or pursue as a career are still very heavily rooted in these socially assigned gender expectations? Do you feel that, or do you feel that newer, younger women who come into academia do choose to sort of break out of what is assigned to them and pursue their own interests? So do you feel that there is this bias in the first place, and do you see it changing with more number of younger women and other gender minorities coming into academia?
I think when I was studying, that was in the 70s, no? That time, it was very much, economics was very much a male-dominated subject. But I was active in a New Left group, and the group wanted someone to have a hang of Marxist economics. So that motivated me. In fact, I changed my stream. I was in a science stream, and I was right from childhood, I was told to become a doctor, so prepared. But when I became active in this left group, I opted for it. But it was very much a male-dominated this thing. There used to be, like in my university, there used to be a weekly seminar, but not a single woman student. They would talk to me during in a hush-hush tone after the seminar, but in the seminar, nobody opened their mouth. I was the only woman who, and a student, because even there are teachers and students both in the seminar, and I spoke. And that created tremendous male backlash from the male colleagues, no? And some of them would even gang up that we should see to it that she doesn't get to first class first or gold medal. So it was a very petty and very mercenary, no? The way man reacted about women speaking on a hardcore economics topics, no? And I used to read economic, that time it was Economic Weekly. So I started reading Economic Weekly since 1969, mainly because I used to conduct study circles in Gujarati, Hindi, for the workers also on Marxist economics and all. So I used to read this. So I had up-to-date knowledge about what was happening in our country, like, and plus some of the books, those days, Economics and Politics of Garibi Hatao by Ajit Roy. I had translated some of the chapters of Marxist economic theory by Ernest Mandel and all. So all that, it was a very, male environment. After I came to Bombay, I saw that economics department was the largest department in SNDT Women's University. There are 52 PG departments, and you keep the strength of 51 departments, which would together, and economics department, and it would be like a same, no? You can equate the economics department strength with 50. Mainly because Bombay being a financial capital, the opportunities for women in economics are more. In SNDT, there are 4 media for instruction: Gujarati, Hindi, Marathi, and English. So the English medium students, obviously, they would not even want any help from placements that they would on their own would be absorbed either by Bombay Stock Exchange or the financial institutions or in the teaching or think tanks or research, and they would do some courses on analytics and SPSS, and they would learn. Hindi medium students, they had more restrictions, and they said that we may not be allowed to go out and work, but at least we can give tuitions in economics, because in Maharashtra, economics as a subject is there even for HSC. So that would give them opportunity. And Gujarati medium, they said we will get, there are so many Gujarati journals who focus on trade and business and enterprise and this. So there they would get a job either of a journalist if the families allowed them, or otherwise they would give the private tuitions and they would start their own business. Because Gujarati women, Gujarati students, they would say that they would like to be self-employed and all. So motivations differed, and Maharashtrian girls, Marathi medium students also in economics, we had a good strength of that. And they said that it would be useful for them to get government job, because when they apply for MPSC, the way we have UPSC, we have a Maharashtra Public Service Examination. It's a knowledge of economics always would help them in cracking those exams, no? And by 80s, though, economics as a one semester course had come everywhere. Engineering college, School of Architect, IIT, everywhere they had one semester, 6 months you have to do microeconomics and micro and macroeconomics. So they said that even those opportunities would be available to the students of economics. This I'm talking of Bombay, but I don't think when I went for a NAC visit to various other universities, they said, no, women did not opt for economics. No, I went to Rajasthan, and I saw that not a single girl was there in economics. They were mostly in the Sanskrit and sociology and literature. No?
I just while you were talking, I remembered something, a small incident from my school days. I remember, so economics again was one of my favorite subjects. That was something I wanted to pursue, but eventually journalism is what I ended up pursuing. But I remember in my economics class, because I really liked the subject, this was in +2, I was very attentive and I would score good marks. But because it was a co-ed school, there was this whole thought process every time if I were to answer a question right, or if my marks were good, it was like, how is this girl scoring better than the boys in economics? And this is not even 10 years back. That is when I was in class 12, and it's just that whole thing that women, okay, you're good at English literature and history, because those are subjects that women are good at, but technical things, whenever it comes to technical things, then how that question that arises, somebody's good, and they're like, how are you good at that? So just carrying forward from that, and from what you said, there is this again running narrative in the society that women are good teachers, and it's not so much related to them, their academic or intellectual expertise, more like, okay, teacher as in they will nurture, they will be caretakers, good guide, this motherly figure. So as a teacher yourself, somebody who's taught for so long, how have you engaged with these kind of gender stereotypes about women in teaching? I would want to know, Professor.
I think, first of all, I taught most of my life in SNDT. Okay, I retired from SNDT in 2017, and last under reemployment scheme of Tata's, I worked for 3 years in TISS. So in SNDT, I saw that at a postgraduate level, I haven't taught undergraduate, but I've always taught postgraduate. The postgraduate courses, we saw so many girls were from co-ed institution. And we asked them that how come you have done your BA, BCom, BSc, MBA, BBM, all from Bombay University, and now why are you coming to SNDT? So they said that there we had to always be in the shadow of boys. All the opportunities of co-curricular activities, extracurricular activities, debate, discussion, everything was completely male-centered. And here we get so many opportunities where we are in the leadership role, no? Because by then, by the time they complete their bachelor's, women also start feeling that they have individuality, they have their choices, and they've had, I think, so many short-term relationships where they've been bullied or subordinated by their friends and male friends and all. So I think that consciousness that we have, we can take a leadership role, we can present paper, because there are so many intercollegiate events which are happening. So research paper competition and your creative expressions and Yuva Mahotsav and sports and all. So they came basically mainly because here they would get more opportunity. Number two, that women teachers, they do a lot of hand holding. And there is no fear of sexual harassment. So that is also very important concern for the girls to open up with them. And they said, if we generally what happens whenever we tell, that I have heard from a number of students, PhD as well as MA students, that the moment they know your vulnerability, they take advantage. Anybody, whether you tell it to the boyfriend or your friend circle or teachers or non-teaching staff, people take advantage and they perceive you differently. While when we tell the women teachers, they show us the way how to get out of that situation. So that I found it a very inspiring and that this is because I was in Bombay University and I had gone to SNDT. So people say they try to get into Bombay University. And here you are in Bombay University and you are going to Women's University, which is considered to be inferior. No, and I said no. My commitment is to women's cause, and there I have an agenda setting power to choose what kind of syllabus I want. And economics of gender and development is the paper which SNDT had introduced, and they wanted me to teach. I was going there as visiting faculty, and they invited me to join the university. So that is one very important way in which students see women teachers, that they have a genuine interest in students' development and without any vested interest. So that is one good the compliment which the students would give to teachers. And they said the moment a teacher sees tears in my eyes, because so many students they are first generation learners, and they would approach students that can we pay fees in installment. And teachers says, just don't cry, I'm paying your fees. Whenever you want, you help some other person. So this kind of spirit, of hand holding without taking advantage of their helplessness. So that was a one good this thing. Plus, so many teachers at a PG level, at least, that they would be 100%. They would be giving their time for academics. While the man, because my campus was in Churchgate, which is near Bombay Stock Exchange, so most of the time male teachers were busy only about stock exchange and how to ek ka 11 kaise karne ka. So that kind of a that shortcut to getting rich. So those kind of, so as compared to that, power needs of women teachers were less. And in the 80s, like there used to be so much of exhaustion among teachers, that double burden which you talk about, that housework, childcare and teaching. So those incidences were much more in the 70s and 80s. But by 90s, I saw the younger generation of women teachers. They were very, very, very clear about what they want to do in life. In fact, the students also at a master's level, when I was new, 77, when I started teaching in PG level, they were just waiting for marriage, because their marriage did not take place. They did masters, but that scenario changed. By 80s, they wanted to do MA. They defied and negotiated with their parents to do masters. And by 90s, the scenario was even one step ahead, where these women, they said that we have heard so many horror stories of dowry harassment in our family, in our relatives, in our neighborhood, and what we read in the paper and all. I don't want to undergo that kind of humiliating experience. And that's why first I will save money. Chota to ghar, even in the outskirts of Bombay, if it is one room kitchen, I'll take. But nobody should tell me abhi ke abhi ghar se niklo. So that I heard from so many girls. So immediately after joining the college, they would say, and by then the university had also started a scheme called Earn and Learn. This ma'am, just get us some assignment under Earn and Learn scheme. The lectures are for 4 hours. So the 4 hours we'll do the part-time job. And later on, they started demanding internship also. So that if we have internship, at least because we have had such a cocoon life, everything is monitored. Home and college. So we don't know the outside world. So if the university facilitates internship, then we will know that what are the opportunities, and maybe seeing our work, they may also give up a job. So otherwise, where shall we do the job hunting? No?
Yeah. So, Professor, while speaking about how the female teachers are genuinely interested in the growth of their students, in the context of them not having any vested interest, especially when students open up and are being vulnerable, there's also this aspect of power and privilege that comes into play, and
Right.
so. And a lot of times we see that with male teachers, in situations that you have referred to also, it's always the gender privilege and coupled with the hierarchical privilege that they get, the teacher student relationship, that's mostly taken advantage of. So when we speak about this in the larger context, and from your long and rich years of experience in the academia and the women's movement in the country, what is your take on the Me Too movement in
I
academia?
think that's why I have a lot of respect for Me Too movement, because the internal committees, I was Bombay University when it started Women Development Cell, I was the member secretary, and I know under what pressure you work. Even they had I had an image of a firebrand feminist who had entered academia. Still, people had temerity to tell me that go slow. Soft meaning of soft pedal, just pull on this thing. And where there was extremely horrendous, barbaric ways of sexual harassment that the contract teachers, and by then the contract teachers, like 40% of the employees were on a contract basis. So their career was on tenterhooks. No, every 11 months they had to, they were terminated. Not even 11 months, 9 months. In the month of March, they would be terminated. Again, they would have to appear for interview in the month of June to save the salary of 3 months. So most of the management would do that. So, and so the internal committees most of the time doesn't works under tremendous pressure from the authorities, and especially when the culprit is powerful. He's a HOD, or he's a super guide, a PhD supervisor, or he's a professor who attracts a lot of funding from the corporates and this thing, or he's a principal or member of a management. So when their allegations are against them, it's very, very difficult, because internal complaints committee is totally powerless, totally. And then the only recourse is the Me Too movement. No? So now, at least for the first time in social media, and only one good thing I find extremely important thing about Me Too movement is that there is solidarity. Because generally, most of the time when there is a complaint of sexual harassment, whole institution gets polarized. One gang is supporting the accused, other gang is supporting the university or whatever. Your institution becomes a war zone, and accusation and counter accusations are made. Man doesn't suffer a lot. He doesn't lose his increment. He doesn't lose his pension. He doesn't lose all the privileges that he has had. And his wife also worships him in public. She would come. My husband is not like that. He's a loving husband and he's a caring father. The children would come. It is only the woman who is the one who gets accused, and the kind of victim blaming that happens. No, why it happened with her only? There can be smoke without fire. I have seen her taking coffee in a canteen with him, or she was talking. 6 months back, they were in a very good talking terms. They used to crack jokes and all, and now it is a relationship gone sour. So always it's a woman who is blamed. And in any case, like if somehow the family comes to know of it, then she is doubly tortured by the family also, no? Whether it's a natural family, if she's an unmarried teacher, or if she's married, then the in-laws and husband. So we have seen such a heartbreaking stories of all these cases of sexual harassment, that Me Too movement. At least one good important thing is that it's not only one woman in isolation who is talking. There is a group of women, and they can also file class suit. We saw in a Priya Ramani case that such a powerful man of a ruling party and a woman journalist sticking out her neck, and then she got support from so many journalists. No, that only, otherwise she would have been vilified and she would have been completely destroyed, and she would have been in jail. No. So, and we have to understand that the power equation between those who are complaining in the Me Too or in the social media, they are young, they are entering the field, and they are facing, the accused is extremely powerful. They have all the resources, economic resources, social capital, and the political mileage. And as against that, these are the interns and young employees who are facing such cruel treatment. And this powerful man think that they have an entitlement over their bodies, no? So, and when there is no justice system, then Me Too is the only avenue. So,
absolutely. So, Professor, so in this context, how do you feel that professors, especially women, who come across students who reveal such incidents to them, or women professors who are on ICs and everything else, what do you feel? How do you feel teachers can intervene? How do you feel teachers can be more empathetic? Do you feel that there is something more that women in academia, especially senior professors like you, could do to make campuses a safer space for women? I mean, I'm not saying that the onus should be on women, but since the gender lens and the sensitivity and the lived experience resonates better with women, do you feel there is something more that women in the field could do to make younger aspirants and researchers and students feel more safe and comfortable in campuses?
yeah, I think when you support the agreed and the complainant, when there are hardcore evidences in this, but then too you have to be prepared to pay price, no? Even as a senior teacher, because you get isolated in the committee, and you also direct and indirect threats are given. You lose out on friends, and you have to learn to live in isolation, which I don't mind, because isolation gives me more time to do more work, which is productive work and all. But that is the price you pay. You are never you can never be a part of any gang, which I have never been throughout my career, because I always, on women's question, I always stuck out my neck. So people maintain dignity. They knew that I'm hardworking and I'm useful, but they maintain distance with me. So I have never been in any of the inner circles of the powerful people throughout my career. Because already I had enough work in the women's movement and the grassroots work also. So but it's not so easy even to be in that committee, and especially when the person, the complainant is a Dalit or Adivasi person with disability, transgender person. So many, even yesterday, such a heartbreaking story of one student who identifies himself as a man, but his voice is of a woman. And how he gets humiliated and sexually brutalized by one highly renowned professor. Now, he has now made complaint to the ICC. But it is, even after my retirement, I'm getting so many such stories. The only thing I can do is that I can suggest where they can go and where they can get justice. And now we have also local complaints committee, about which not much consciousness is there. But if your internal committee doesn't give you justice, you can go to LCC. That is also very important. Yeah. But it is not, even when you are in a powerful position, and most of the women teachers also, if they are aspiring for promotion or a plum position or a trip abroad or big funds for research or for the department and all, they would always appease man in power, no? So it is not only they being biologically women, but what are their interests, no? Immediate interests, vested interests. And it is quite difficult for women to reach that level in the totally misogynist and male-dominated environment. And they don't want to lose that space. No? So sometimes they are even more male than male themselves. I have seen even in the judges, like women survivor of violence, the women judges sometimes would give totally insensitive judgment. And series, in 1 week, there were 4 such judgments where POCSO cases, were teenage girls cases, and the woman judge, she says that, how can we imprison that boy? He is just 16. He's the only breadwinner of the family. He has a whole life in front of him. Even after knowing, it's a post-truth, after knowing what all he had done, no? Given drinks with laced with sedatives, and how he called her in sly for birthday party and he blackmailed her. After knowing all that, the judge would say that he is the only breadwinner of his aging parents. So we have seen that.
I think, Professor, like listening to you and like having, like, I think I can speak for both me and Sukanya. We both have been in university spaces, academic spaces, and that's true. Like the whole thing about even having those people, even if they're women professors, having those people who will put their neck out there for you is like is a huge thing for us students, because then you at least know, okay, I have this person in my corner. I do feel like when I speak, when I say this, and I feel I say it for a lot of people for whom you've been there. Like, I think we need more people like you out there, for people to be able to speak and say things out.
During 90s, it was easier because we had such a robust women's movement. No, now what we see is the total atomization of every human life everywhere in all fields of life. Then it becomes very difficult. Even when we have now systems and structures and laws which are there, but even implementers have to give up their biases and vested interests both.
So, Professor, like concluding this brilliant conversation that we had, like the last question that I would want to ask you is, if you were to address young women and gender minorities who are now aspiring to join academia, and there are a lot of them, what would you urge them to practice and hold on to in their professional journey as well as personal journey in tackling this gender bias while they enter academia and go ahead with it? What would be your message?
First, the reflexivity has to be there. Whatever you are seeing, you have to be self-reflexive. Constantly, those who come from the privileged background, to be conscious of their privilege, being sensitivity to intersectional vulnerabilities and intersectional oppressions, that is one. Taking interest in and lifelong learning, the approach of lifelong learning, that all of you have to be intellectually versatile, because 21st century is very much knowledge plays a very important role. And taking interest, so many issues that we are facing, whether it is a pandemic which made us aware about public health issues, or climate change, which say that now it is important for us to be acquainted with the STEM subjects and the state of the art in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So it's very important because the complexity of the issues, if you want to grapple and if you want power, so power without ability and knowledge which would make you a joker, which is which we don't want. If we want to have a plum position, then we have to be completely self-sufficient, administratively managing in terms of managing abilities, in terms of our knowledge base, so that we can make very evidence-based interventions and policy formulation. So that is so you have to be serious about what you want to do. It's just not a degree for its own sake, but degree for knowledge, gaining knowledge as well as knowledge construction. So that is very important. Research is and now it has even right from undergraduate level, they are creating a space for serious research. So even taking the research very seriously, not to be averse to field, because now recently you get most of the students, they just want to do web-based work, but I think there is no shortcut to field work. That's very important. Even when in apex committees and all, when they ask me to be member and write a chapter, unless I go to field, I don't get even words. I don't get that language. So it's very important to be in touch with the community, even as educationist, as a researcher, or as a policymaker. So that is very thing. And more young women should come up to take this serious challenge in the higher education. And the major crisis that we are facing currently is that millions of women are getting degrees. They are getting higher education degrees, but it is not translating into career. 40% of women MBAs are out of work. And after pandemic, we have seen just day before yesterday's report, which shows that even in white collar jobs in a post-pandemic period, hardly 9% women have come back. So we have to change the gender norms, where both the state and the non-state actors will have to see that the care work is not only women's domain, it is everyone's work. And that has to start from preschool. So the national education policy also has to bring gender sensitization and the gender equality right from the preschool days. So that is that state has to do, and I think women also have to continuously question and change the gender norms and negotiate in the family, in the community, in the public platform, write more about these issues which are hardly spoken of in the mainstream platforms.
So, like Shriya said, to wrap up this episode, which has been so, the conversations have been so relatable, and it really feels like a warm hug, because for people like me and Shriya, and I'm sure I'm speaking for a lot of people out there who are listening to us as well, academics and academia and this constant process of learning, we started this episode on that note, that it is a lifelong constant process, and to have mentors and teachers who would not take advantage of your vulnerabilities, who are mindful of their power and their privilege, and who are genuinely interested in your growth, to have those kind of people around in itself is such a huge relief, especially for women and people from gender minorities, while they tackle different kinds of multiple forms of oppressions. And Professor, I think I will always remember the fact that you said there is a price that you pay for sticking your neck out, and that the price is that you must learn to live in isolation. I'm sure that these words resonate with everybody out there in academia, as teachers, as students, as researchers, who feel that they are alone and who feel that they're sinking, or that they need support, or that nobody gets them. I'm sure that these words go out to them and comfort them, and I'm sure that there is
This isolation and not being part of gang should be treated as a blessing.
Yeah.
There is so much to do: art, music, theater, reading, and mentoring the younger generation. No, so even 24 hours are less for this kind of work. Yeah.
On that very happy and very positive note that only you can strike, Professor Patel, let's wind up this episode. Thank you so much. I wholeheartedly thank you for being on this episode, for being so forthright and so honest and so from the heart with your responses, and for being so warm and nice to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to interact with your team. So committed, so sincere, and so single-mindedly working for feminist solidarity.
That's all for today. We'll be back with yet another episode of Intersection Feminism Desi Style on your favorite streaming platforms next Thursday.